Hello and welcome to episode 40 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Welcome to an entertaining discussion of the week's developments in clean energy and transportation. This week, Brian Stockton.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about how Elon Musk, God bless him, he survived COVID, we think. Maybe in denial about it, we don't know. He's hinting at making the car that I've always wanted him to make. And more detail on Canada's first commercial geothermal plant, which is happening in Saskatchewan, where we live, where we are broadcasting to you from, or shall I say podcasting. And Cadillac will pay its dealers $500,000 if they get out of the EV game.
Yeah, and there's another General Motors story about all the cars they're announcing. There's Canada's net zero by 2050 plan, and I brought props this week, James.
You brought props this week?
Yeah.
You've never had props before. We haven't had props on this show, Brian. I'm excited. It's contingent on video, though. You can't have props on a podcast.
Well, here's the thing. The prop is both visual and auditory.
Oh, get it. Now, I'm really interested now. This is just...
Yeah, I could tell.
This is too much. This is... My GoPro mount had fallen down, and I forgot to put it back up. So now I don't know where to place my GoPro. It's a second angle. Where do I put it?
I can think of somewhere to put it.
You son of... How dare you? Well, I don't know what to do, honestly. I'll just stick it over here for like a slightly different angle. Yeah, there we go. Slightly different angle of James. Okay. Brian, how are you this week? We have COVID ripping through our neighborhoods in Saskatchewan. We used to be a good place here as we were podcasting over the summer. Now it's scary. It's even too scary to podcast. I feel like I might get your germs over the mic.
Yeah, no, those were the good old days when the COVID numbers were low. But I think that's the problem. Everybody got complacent. It's like, oh, well, our numbers are low. We can go out and do stuff. And, they finally closed the curling rinks. Curling is huge here. But I thought to myself, well, I mean, why were the curling rinks ever open in the first place? That doesn't make any sense.
I know. And guess what? One of my son's best friends' grandfather has COVID from that curling rink. And it was about 2 weeks ago. And guess what? He's 80 years old.
Yeah, and legendary hockey player Fred Sasakamoose from Saskatchewan just passed away of COVID. He was 86 years old. It's and we're starting to hear about people we know that have it. It's not good, James.
It's not good at all. And these people. If I was 80, I wouldn't want to get the COVID. I feel like I'm going to die. If I get it, I'm going to die, and I'm 54. So we'll see if this is our last podcast or not. You never know, people. You should appreciate our podcasts because they could come to a sudden and abrupt end. And, you could be tuning in one week and you hear funeral music and my brief obituary, which I've written. It's all fictional.
Oh, great.
It's all fictional. But
I've written one, too. But,
for me?
I could give some play to yours. But...
For me or you?
Oh, for you.
Oh, good. Because it's completely... necessary that we respect my life in fictional terms because the real story is just, it's just sad. It's just tragic.
Yeah.
It's sad. So, do you want to start us off this week? I'm usually the guy who starts us off. Why don't you get into what you want to talk about?
Yeah. So, let's talk about Loblaws. So, Loblaws in Canada, big grocery chain, they've partnered with Gatik to deploy Canada's first autonomous delivery fleet. So I had no idea that we were this close to some autonomous driving here in Canada, but they call themselves a middle mile delivery company, or Gatik. It's basically moving groceries between stores, it sounds like, or between warehouses and stores. And they think that they can do this autonomously with delivery vehicles, and they're going to start in Toronto in January.
That's amazing. These things really sneak up on you, don't they? We've been waiting for autonomous vehicles forever, and we keep hearing hints at it, and all of a sudden, we have people talking about it. And I'm going to talk some more about it on the show, too, because it's happening in California.
Yeah, and I think the reason this is going to work, is because it's essentially, the same truck is going to go back and forth between the same locations, it sounds like. So, in terms of autonomy, you don't need necessarily the most advanced system if it's just got to go to the same place every day.
Well, by the way, everyone, we are on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for extra video content, including clips from our podcast recording, where you can see and hear Brian's props. I'm excited, Brian. I'm very excited about that.
The props are coming up. Yeah. Oh, and I sent you an audio clip, too, which is what I forgot to mention. Maybe we should get to that if you have it handy.
Sure, I do have it handy. You want me to run it now?
Yeah, we were just talking last week about converting classic cars to electric, and then a video showed up this week on the Fully Charged channel on YouTube, and I thought it was interesting, so yeah, I'd love to hear the clip.
The stats on this thing are bonkers. They're crazy. This goes further on a charge than the original car went on a tank of petrol. It's faster, it's lighter, it accelerates quicker. I've also been told if it makes that noise, I don't have to worry. That's just the fiberglass flange at the front. But what happened then? Even then, that wasn't fully floored because I'm just too scared to do it. But I felt the back whipping a little bit.
That surprises me that they have further range. That's what really got me.
Yeah, and that was the main reason I wanted to bring that up and play the clip. Is of course, the complaint always about electric cars is a lack of range, and it's often a complaint when you do a conversion because there isn't enough space to sort of stash the batteries. But in terms of, and this is a 1982 Ferrari 308 GTS, and sometimes cars like that, sports cars like that, gasoline powered, have terrible range. And so in this particular instance, they converted to electric. The car got lighter, which I didn't expect.
Same car.
And same car. The car got lighter and got more range than when it was a gas-powered vehicle. So, yeah, I just thought that was fascinating. And, of course, better performance, even though this is a well-performing sports car. This is from the 80s.
So, yeah, it would have a big engine, I'm sure, with, 12 cylinders, 8 cylinders, something like that? A lot of cylinders.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Ferraris, but it's probably just an 8-cylinder, but it's the car that Magnum P.I. drove on the old Tom Selleck Magnum P.I. show. And,
how did he afford a Ferrari? I can't remember how was it gifted to him?
A private detective. Yeah, I never really watched that show. I don't know. Maybe he had a.
Oh my! I watched it just for the mustaches.
There was another character, maybe a sort of a benefactor. I can't remember, but maybe the other guy was rich. I can't remember.
Higgins was sort of his nemesis and voice of reason. It's interesting because Elon Musk this week talked about the Tesla Semi, and he was in an interview, and he was saying that we can get that. The challenge with the Semi is you don't want it to be too heavy, because then it's not as profitable if you can't carry as much, because there's weight limits on all roads, and you want to get that. You want to keep that weight down. So they said they're looking at maybe only being 1 ton of penalty for the EV version, but he sees that getting to a point where it's even. He also said that he envisions a 1,000-kilometer Semi, which he hasn't said before. So that's interesting, because that'll make it even more viable for longer hauler trucks.
Yeah, no, he let out a few sort of tidbits of new information that, but yeah, it's, the bigger the vehicle, like a Semi, obviously you need tons of batteries. The batteries are heavy. This can be a problem, but it sounds like they've pretty much solved it. Just a slight penalty for it being a little bit too heavy, but like a 500 kilometer and an 800 kilometer are sort of doable now, and they think they can stretch to 1,000 in the future. It's all very exciting.
I wanted to mention something just off the top of the show that we were talking about how there's all kinds of gasoline fires in ICE cars and in combustion vehicles, and that they're a lot more prominent statistically than in EVs, and yet the EVs make front page headlines on national news stories. Well, in our very own backyard, there's a report that Estevan RCMP responded to a fatal vehicle fire on Highway 39 bypass, and they said they received a report that a man was trapped inside and he died. So in our own backyard, there are vehicle fires that are not only bad, they are deadly, and that's too bad that happened, but... and I also wanted to ask you, Brian Stockton, it's winter, if you haven't noticed. How's your Tesla doing? Your first full winter of a Tesla you're in now. Do you have any reports for us?
Yeah, well, I want to talk more about flaming batteries, but yeah,
Okay.
I've learned that I have to warm the Tesla up more than I maybe thought. So, yeah, when it's below zero, it's -10, it's -20. You just pull out your app and you can kind of preheat the car, and so I had been doing it like 10 minutes before I leave, because that's
Oh,
plenty
no.
of time
Oh,
to
no,
heat
no,
up
no,
the
no.
cabin. Like it only takes a couple of minutes to get the cabin to the right temperature. But it doesn't really warm the batteries up enough. So I was finding that I'd be driving around town and you don't get the same regen braking. And I don't care for that. Like when the batteries are cold, you lose your regen braking and you have to use the actual brakes. And I'm used to now using the regen braking and hardly ever touching the brakes. So yeah, the moral of the story is I've just been warming it up for more like, a half an hour before I'm ready to go somewhere. And that just gives me better regen braking.
Now, why does it warm the battery? Is it because as it warms the cabin, it's warming the battery too? I mean, how does that work in a Tesla?
Yeah, like there's no button, like there should maybe be a button that just says warm the batteries, but there isn't. So it knows that when you're warming up the cabin, it just knows, oh, my owner is going to be driving soon, so I better warm up the batteries.
Right. Okay. Well, you know what? I bet that might change because things are always changing with Tesla with over-the-air updates. And what did you want to talk about fires for?
Yeah, so there was a story this week about a Tesla Model 3 that was in a horrific crash. The driver was, it sounds like, going incredibly fast and ended up with a horrible wreck. The pictures of the car were just unbelievable. Like you wouldn't imagine that anybody could survive this fire, but apparently the driver got out of the car and tried to run away, perhaps because he was breaking the law for driving so fast. But
Yes.
the part of the story I was thinking of was, battery fires. This crash was so horrific that the Tesla was so mangled and taken apart that the whole battery pack and Tesla batteries are made up of thousands of smaller cells, like AA or bigger than AA batteries, and these were ripped apart and flung around, and flaming batteries literally went through somebody's window and landed on someone's bed. Flaming batteries.
Well, I heard one landed at a person's lap as they were sitting at a chair. I mean, that's the stuff that you wouldn't write into a movie because it's too ridiculous. But that actually happened.
Yeah, so
It's the only time it's ever happened.
It's a positive story if you look at the fact that the driver survived, but it's a negative story if you're sitting in a house and a flaming battery lands on your lap.
Well, Brian, as you know, Teslas are the safest vehicle really on the road, I think,
Yeah.
statistically speaking, and they're getting safer as the technology improves and everything like that. I'm dying to know what your prop is. Do you want to talk about your prop? I
Okay.
mean, come on. The suspense is killing me.
All right, so we have some gas appliances in our house. Like we have a gas cooktop, and we have a fireplace. Like sometimes we light a fire in the fireplace. And the gas cooktop, you have to start it every time, right? Like with a barbecue, like there's usually an igniter thing that gives you a
A little
spark.
sparky.
Yeah, but one of the burners on our cooktop stopped working. The lighting mechanism stopped working. So for a couple of months now, we've just been lighting it with a match. But it's kind of unpleasant because, we just have regular matches and, it lights up and you're worried about burning your fingers. So I thought, well, maybe I should get one of those butane lighters. You've seen those, like barbecue lighters where,
That's what I use.
yeah, like they're about this long. And so it's got a bit of a reach so you don't have to get too close to the flame. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll get one of these. And I, thought, well, I'll go on Amazon. We'll see what these cost. Maybe I can. Anyway, I get to Amazon, and much to my surprise, those long butane lighters are obsolete. Like, you can still get them, but they're obsolete. And the thing, like the first 50 listings on Amazon was all, so that's a butane one right there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to demonstrate that?
Okay. I apologize to our podcast listeners. You've been so faithful, and yet you have to watch the YouTube video to watch me light the... we have flames on the podcast.
Yeah. So it's butane, and I guess you have to refill it or get a cartridge or something, or do you just throw it away when it's done?
I throw it away.
Yeah.
Because I don't use it very often.
Yeah.
Use it for lighting camping things, and I don't know what else.
Yeah, so I go on Amazon. The first 50, like I looked up, long lighter or, barbecue lighter. They're all now electrical arc lighters, and they work with rechargeable batteries. So that's the prop that I have. I ordered one.
Oh.
And
How much?
it was about $25, and it is there's an on-off switch. You turn that on, it shows you the battery level, and then you press the button to light it. It apparently lasts for 500 lights on a charge. It's got a USB thing to recharge it, and it just gives you a little electrical arc between these 2 points. And so, like if you're lighting a candle, you just put the wick between the 2 things and turn it on. So I will demonstrate here. And I'll put it next to the microphone here. It makes a cool little sound. I'll put it next. I don't know if you can see that on the...
Yeah, right there. Right. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just really surprised that this thing that I'd never heard of before, and it's basically almost your only chance of, like, if you're looking online for these, like, you can still get the butane lighters, but just the fact that something, burning fuel like butane or propane can be replaced by batteries, rechargeable batteries so easily. And that just seems like that's something we talk about on the show all the time.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
This is because I go out and I buy like a 5-pack at Costco for $10, and I think, okay, it's Costco. Come on, Costco. Mm. They have quality control because they have so much power. They can dictate to their suppliers. They damn well better be good if they're going to put them in their store. That's usually the case. But I get there and I'm like, I'm going like this all the time. It's not starting. I'm swearing. I want to eat lunch, and it's windy and the sun's going down, and I'm camping with the camper, and it's not working, even though it's brand new and it's got stuff in it, and I'm blowing on the end. I am very interested, and I know what I'm asking Santa for this year for Christmas. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And I bet all of our listeners didn't know about that either.
No. And the thing I'm not sure of is how long it's going to last. So this isn't necessarily a better solution because I don't know. Like maybe in a year it's going to break and I'm going to have to throw it away. But 500 lights on a charge.
On a charge, and then it'll charge again. And I can charge it in the camper because I've got solar and USB ports around. Worst case scenario, I could charge it up there. That's very, I don't know. This is, I feel like we should end the show now and I should go order one. That's how I feel.
And I was just also surprised that I'd never heard of this before. And they're so
No, and I haven't either.
Clearly widespread. And yet, it's somebody, I feel like I'm usually up on technology, but I had no idea.
We have a review section of our YouTube website, of our channel.
Yep.
I'm going to put a little clip of you reviewing that. This is what this is going to be, and it's going to get 1 million views.
I don't know about that,
but anyway, if you're watching this clip on YouTube of Brian's new lighter technology, remember to tune into the podcast, which everyone else has already because they're good listeners. Thank you, everyone. And by the way, Brian, it's time to move on because we're running out of time. Did you know that robo-taxis can now collect cash money from passengers in California? More than a dozen companies have long been approved to test out self-driving cars. Now they can also charge passengers. So this is what's happening in Phoenix with Waymo. 1 in 3, they're starting a paid service just for the people who were testing it before. They can now pay money for it. And then 1 in 3 of those does not have a driver. People say to me all the time, they say, Jimmy, self-driving's never coming, not in our lifetimes. It's an unsolvable problem. But they're doing it. How could you say it's unsolvable when they're actually doing it? And so it's there and it's in California. Of course, we want to see what's going to happen with places where we live in Canada when it's winter and you have snow and everything's white and sometimes, and it's really hard to see where you're going. But that's what Elon is working on with the Tesla problem. And apparently there's a new self-driving thing coming. Oh, and we're so waiting for you to get full self-driving beta testing.
Well, hopefully,
so cool.
Comes to Canada soon. We'll see.
Anyway, I wanted to point that out because, the California Public Utilities Commission has approved the ability to launch robotaxis and charge for them. And Cruise, that's GM's company, and Waymo are involved. But there's a whole bunch of other ones, too. It's not just those companies. But, I mean, if I had to bet, I'd put my money on Tesla or Waymo. Where do you feel about this now that your stock has gone through the roof and you wearing gold-plated underwear? Like, how do you feel? Do you feel strong about where Tesla's going? Is it overvalued? Or are they going to win this autonomy fight?
Yeah, I mean, it probably is a little overvalued because they haven't really proved any of this stuff. But it does feel to me like they're in the lead in terms of autonomy. I mean, they're not rolling out this pilot project we talked about earlier in Toronto like that's some other company. But the Tesla plan has probably more legs. I don't know. I'm still confident. And of course, yeah, the Tesla stock is running up in part because their S&P 500 inclusion and all of these index funds have to buy some, 50 or 60 billion dollars worth of Tesla stock by December 21st. So, yeah, it's going to be fun to see how that shakes out.